They said she never left his property. But what if the truth was never meant to leave either? A man, exonerated after 18 years in prison, finally gets his life back, only to be accused of an even darker crime. But what if the real story isn't about guilt or innocence, but about power, corruption, and a system that needed a scapegoat? If you've ever felt powerless in the face of injustice, if you've ever watched someone get crushed by a system designed to protect them, then hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready for one of the most disturbing, heartbreaking, and unforgettable crime stories we've ever told. It was a crisp fall morning in Wisconsin, October 31, 2005. Halloween. But for 25-year-old Teresa Halbach, it was just another day on assignment. She had a schedule to follow, one that included a stop at the Avery salvage yard, where she was to photograph a van for Auto Trader magazine. She never left. When her family reported her missing, the trail led directly to Stephen Avery, a man who knew the cold kiss of injustice all too well. Let's rewind. In 1985, Stephen Avery was convicted of a brutal sexual assault. He spent 18 years behind bars. He lost everything, his freedom, his dignity, time with his children, all stolen. But DNA evidence eventually proved what he'd been screaming all along. He didn't do it. He walked free in 2003. And he was angry. Rightfully so. The state of Wisconsin was being sued for $36 million for Avery's wrongful conviction. Then Teresa vanished. And suddenly, Avery was right back where he'd started. Only this time, the crime was far darker. Imagine clawing your way back from hell, only to be dragged down again. That's what it felt like for Stephen. The public loved the narrative. Convicted man turns monster. It was too convenient. But the inconsistencies, they piled up fast. Teresa's car was found on Avery's property. But her key was inside his bedroom, with only Avery's DNA on it, not hers. Bones were found in a burn pit. But forensic testing couldn't conclusively tie them to her. And then came Brendan Dassey, Stephen's 16-year-old nephew. Soft-spoken, learning disabled. He became the prosecution's golden boy. Or rather, their puppet. Under hours of unrecorded, unsupervised interrogation, Brendan gave a confession. He mumbled about rape, about murder, about fire, except none of it matched physical evidence. His story shifted every time police corrected him. So, what happened to her head? We cut her hair. No. Brendan, be honest. We know something happened to her head. He shot her. The video of that interrogation went viral. And for good reason. Didn't feel like justice. Felt like bullying. A boy being led, not questioned. Let's talk about the real villain. The system. Not a person. Machine. Fueled by pride, politics, and power. Avery's lawsuit threatened to expose deep corruption in the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. There were officials who had everything to lose if Stephen won. Then suddenly, Stephen became the prime suspect in a murder. Here's where it gets chilling. Manitowoc officials were told to stay off the investigation. Conflict of interest. Yet they kept showing up. Lieutenant James Lenk, Sergeant Andrew Colborne. They claimed to find key evidence. Even though they weren't supposed to be anywhere near the crime scene. Lenk found Teresa's key days into the search, in a place officers had already checked. Colborne. Well, he had allegedly made a call years earlier that raised eyebrows. He once asked dispatch about a license plate that hadn't been reported missing yet. Some called it a mistake. Others called it foreshadowing. And the prosecution. They pressed forward, crafting a narrative. A story full of holes but patched with emotion. And it worked. Because people wanted closure. Not truth. Brendan Dassey's trial was worse. His own lawyer, Len Kaczynski, betrayed him. Instead of defending Brendan, he handed him over. Literally. He arranged another interrogation without Brendan's mother. With no lawyer present, he let detectives shape the story. Then he told Brendan to take a plea deal. A 16-year-old boy, whose IQ barely scratched 70, was being told he'd spend life in prison unless he confessed to a story he didn't understand. The look in Brendan's eyes during the trial. It wasn't guilt. It was confusion, fear. Like a child waking up in a nightmare he couldn't explain. He asked if he could go back to school after his confession. He didn't even understand what he'd done. Because maybe he hadn't done anything at all. In 2015, everything changed. Netflix released Making a Murderer. And suddenly, the world saw what the locals had whispered for years. This wasn't justice. This was theater. Millions watched. Millions raged. Protests, petitions, public outcry. Attorneys like Kathleen Zellner joined the fight, determined to exonerate Avery once again. And she found new evidence. Asterisk cell phone records that didn't align with Teresa being at Avery's. Asterisk signs of planted evidence. Asterisk a lack of blood in a space where a violent murder allegedly occurred. Asterisk suspects never properly investigated, one of whom had a violent history and a connection to Teresa. Still, courts remained unmoved. Every appeal denied. Every question. But Avery and Dassey, two men the system tried to bury, kept fighting. This isn't a story with a satisfying crime, unless you flip the script. Because the crime wasn't the murder. It was the framing. The crime was a system so determined to avoid shame that it built a new nightmare just to cover the old one. Stephen Avery's real crime. Suing the wrong people. Making powerful men sweat. Brendan Dassey's crime. Being slow. Being vulnerable. And Teresa Halbach's. She was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. In the Netflix courtroom, justice didn't wear robes. It wore uniforms, smirks, and gloves. In a world built on stories, sometimes the loudest voice isn't the one telling the truth. It's the one with the badge, the mic, or the courtroom. The Avery case reminds us that justice isn't automatic. It's a fight. And it's a fight not everyone survives. If this story hit you in the gut, don't scroll away. Hit that like button, share this video, and tell us in the comments. Do you think Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey were framed? And for more haunting Reddit crime stories that make you question everything, subscribe. We've got more coming. Let me know if you'd like this adapted into a voiceover script format, broken into cue points, or accompanied by visual storytelling notes or suggested footage.